So the point is, I don't necessarily mean all of these things. I just say what I think will be funny at the time. But I don't have a warning label for which is which. So I understand that can get a little bit tricky.
Well, it's like when I see New Yorkers move to California and they become sarcastic, and then the Californians are taking them literally because it's not as common of a thing. So I get it.
I did a joke article once called the Bulgarian Deadlift Program. And the prescription was to take your maximum weight that you could do in a deadlift and add 30% to the bar and just take 10 attempts 5 days a week until you could finally lift it up and then repeat the cycle. And irresponsible, reckless, how could I do such a thing were some of the responses I got to this joke article. I still hear about that occasionally. That was nearly 10 years ago.
You get some of those messages 2 weeks later, like, oh, I totally fucked myself up. It's your fault.
You know what's funny is I didn't get any messages from people who tried it and hurt themselves or tried it and didn't work. I only got it from people who didn't think it was wise to try it or wise for me to suggest it. I mean, maybe it's really good.
Did anyone hit new PRs? Get any positive
I
feedback?
didn't get any positive feedback, but I also didn't get any feedback from someone who tried it out. So I got people angry that I would suggest such a thing, and that was it. But no one wanted to try it out, which was the whole point. It's a bit of a silly program, but
that I think you just described half of social media.
well, like, hey, everyone's just trying to get love, right?
You're bad. You're a bad person. Like, oh shit. Okay.
Well, social media to me, it's like people trying to be loved. They want love, power, or attention, and it's content without context is how I describe social media.
Totally.
It's like, this is the best thing for you. Oh, really? Like, it's very difficult for me, even with a lot of years of coaching experience, to know what's best for someone else. I rarely know what's best for myself.
Well, yeah, it's a common question is, will this be good for me? And the more the deeper my knowledge becomes, the more the answer becomes, I don't have enough information. It's like, would this be good for me? I'm like, maybe. Like, what have you been doing up until this point? Do you have, if it's a movement thing, do you have any deficiencies that we need to be concerned with? Someone's like, oh, my back hurts. I'm like, well, your hip's tight. Oh, my back hurts. I need to stretch my back. I'm like, well, probably not. You got to find what muscle that should be stable isn't stabilizing, and that would probably shore up, the tightness that you're feeling and this and that. Like, oh, which muscle is that? I go, I don't know. Right. We would have to do a full assessment. And then even if we think we found the thing, we won't know until we work on it for weeks at a time. Sometimes. So yeah, it's the people that come out and go, this is the answer for this. I'm like, you're either new or you're a liar.
They're definitely, well, remember, we naturally want to look for answers, right? Someone, please give me the answer. And if it's a quick fix, oh, that's the best answer ever. Oh, can the answer fit in a 3-minute video that is universal to everybody? Oh, please give me that good stuff, right?
Yeah. The fact that people are looking for quick fixes and answers, they're looking for someone to tell them the answer to their problem, right? And I just wrote an email about this and sent it out this morning. And basically, I learned this one really impactful lesson from one of my mentors years ago, over 10 years ago now. And he said, learning is behavior change. And in my email, I write about how people have been trained through school for memory equals learning. Learning equals memory. It's like, oh, if I can store somebody else's ideas in my head long enough to put it back down on a piece of paper, I've learned it. And so then you have teachers and parents that give you a reward for uh, memorizing long enough to put it on a test, and then they call it learning. So they're really doing a disservice to the kid because they are saying that, well, learning is memorization, and that's important, and that's more important than everything else, it seems. And what ends up happening is people, they we've all seen it, we've done it too. I know I've done it, where someone starts telling you something and you go, I know. It's usually like, you can definitely see it with kids talking to parents.
Oh yeah.
And so when I'm working with clients now, if they go, I know, I go, well, hang on. Do you really know? Or did you have a memory bank of someone's idea, even if it was my idea? Did you learn it? And they know that learning is behavior change. And they go, well, I haven't actually like put it into practice. I go, well, then you don't know it. This is, you have an idea, but you don't actually know. You didn't learn it. And so that frame has been incredibly helpful for me, because I go, oh, I'm not going to give myself any kind of validating reward to myself and pat myself on the back because I exposed myself to a massive amount of information. Like, I read all these books. I know all this shit. It's like, you don't know anything. You didn't learn anything. You expose yourself to information, and it caused you to think, and those thoughts can create behavior change. But until the behavior changes, you didn't learn it.
A lot of interesting points. I would say that the false confidence you get from school on a huge variety of useless subjects is one of the more sinister problems with it, because you leave school thinking, oh, I learned all this stuff. Like, I learned about that. Oh, I learned about that too. But no, you did not. By the time you graduate, you've forgotten 90% of it. 10 years later, you've forgotten 98% of it.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree on that point. I would say that it's a good mental model. Like, if my dog learns a trick and they don't do it, which, like, they're being obstinate or they're being disobedient, they know what to do, but they're choosing not to.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I think that's sometimes the reason people will say, I know, is they do know, but they don't want you to point out the fact that they're not acting on that thing that they know. So they're actually avoiding a discomfort.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I know, but don't talk about it anymore, because then I'll feel bad because I know it, but I'm not doing it.
Right.
And I think that's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is applying what you know, and knowledge is knowing what to do, basically.
Yeah.
Knowledge is knowing, and wisdom is applying what you know in a way that is effective and efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. And learning is behavior change. Great. Not necessarily true, but useful.
There's so much stuff like that, right? Like
So
muscles,
much.
for example. You can't stretch a muscle. Muscles don't stretch. The fibers slide alongside each other, and they have these little guys that hang on and pull it. So they're really not stretchy at all. So you don't stretch muscles, and muscles don't push. So if you were to say, hey, I'm going to stretch before my pushing workout, you're saying absolute nonsense from a physiological standpoint. But from a practical standpoint, you feel something that's like, oh, that's a stretch. I feel that there is tension on that muscle that I'm trying to lengthen. So it feels like a stretch. That's practically true, but physiologically false. A pushing exercise is impossible because muscles only can pull, they cannot push. So even though that's not physiologically accurate, it is practically true to differentiate between a push-up and a row. So there's a lot of stuff like that where it's practically true to have that mental model, but literally false.
Right. Right. I today on today's show, I want to explore mind control. So on a societal level, and so I'm thinking
Fuck.
about.
I thought I was going to get hypnotized.
You are hypnotized. You don't even know it. Uh, so yeah. So I started playing around with one idea, and because I like studying. We'll call it sociology, and I've seen this for over a decade. I've witnessed people fall into this mind trap, and the mind trap is around their health. And so the idea is if uh, if my insurance doesn't cover it, or the doctor doesn't recommend it, uh, or it's the government has made it illegal, then my mind won't even consider doing anything that's outside of that box. And so uh, I've been defining, we look at big pharma, and really we got to look at insurance companies, government regulation, and the FDA is really these three entities that exist in people's minds, and they get stuck in this triangle. So there's three of these things. It's a triangle, and it's a place that we witness people get trapped. And if you suggest anything that falls outside of that triangle, people go, well, I can't do acupuncture. It's like, well, why not? It's not covered by my insurance. I go, oh, so you're not willing. So the idea of paying for shit yourself is out of the question for most people. Like if I talk to the average person, I start
Totally.
asking them about
Totally.
this or that, they're completely unaware that there's even alternatives to mainstream medicine. And so,
Well, it's a classic appeal to authority because what you're doing is you're putting blind faith into this system that they know what is the correct course of action given a certain scenario. And if you're not trained to think critically, which nobody is, people are trained to obey whatever authority figure is there. That's most likely what you're going to do. And it is most efficient to have blind trust for sure. You may not get the best result, but it will definitely be the easiest short term. You just have blind faith in a higher power. Wow, what could be easier?
well, and I want to create the distinction between efficiency and effectiveness. These are two things that people tend to, as you like to say, conflate, or they collapse these distinctions. And just because you got a lot of shit done today doesn't mean that you did the right thing. And
Right.
so, yeah, people that exist inside that triangle, definitely efficient. It costs the least amount. It's the most convenient. It's the fastest. It's all those things. But you could be totally doing the wrong thing that's going to bring you get you the most effective result that you're looking for.
Well, I got a real world example that I've been working with right now since I got two dogs, and they're brother and sister. And they're maturing quickly. So, on the one hand, I think to myself, is it so bad if they fuck each other? And then I was like, yeah, actually, probably not ideal. So, we should not have little incest puppies, although they would be adorable. These puppies are so fucking cute. Uh, but we're looking at these options, and I gotta say, the term fix hardly seems appropriate for what they do to these dogs.
Yeah.
Like if someone said, I'm going to fix you, and what they meant was remove my genitals, I would not think that that is the right term. So
No.
anyway, whatever. Funny term, fix, makes no sense. Hardly seemed broken to begin with, if you ask me. Anyway, point is, it's very inexpensive and it's covered by insurance to remove the testes on the male dog completely and to remove both the ovaries and the uterus from the female dog. But I wanted to learn a little bit more before I did this irreversible procedure.
You critical thinker, you.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking how few alternatives there are. Anyway, so after some research, apparently, as I suspected, it's not great to completely stop the natural hormone production of animals.
Really?
Shocker. Yeah, and so that was really my thinking is I would like to have a regular hormone cascade that goes on through the lives of my dogs.
You
And it
could
is
just inject them
possible.
every day. You have like
I'm
roided
gonna
out
put
dogs.
put them on Prozac. After I'm going to cut your balls off, and then I'll put you on Prozac to solve the sad problem.
Oh my
Oy
God.
vey. I wonder how many people have that done to them metaphorically. How many people get their balls cut off
Oh
psychologically
man.
and then just hop on the Prozac? Anyway,
Well,
I'm getting too far
one
off
of the
topic.
one of the drugs they're using. You've heard about puberty blockers?
Don't get me started here, Mike. Don't
Hang
get me
on.
started. Let me
We have a
finish
whole
this, and then
nother
I'll go
mind
on an
control thing
absolute
before. Don't go
tirade
crazy.
about how that's horrific. But
So,
let me
so
just finish my thought.
one of the
We'll come back to puberty blockers.
one of the puberty
We'll come back
blockers.
to it,
All right,
you
all right.
fucker. Okay. We'll come back to puberty. Look, here's the deal. You can get a vasectomy for your dog. You can get the uterus removed from a female dog and spare the ovaries. So you get these normal hormone secretions. And it dramatically reduces the incidence of orthopedic problems through the life of the dog. So a lot of dogs get like hip and knee problems later in life. Boom. If you keep their hormones intact, they don't have a lot of these similar problems. So there's a big list of benefits to not destroy their endocrine system, basically, through the genitals. It is about 10 times the cost of just getting it the normal fix, the regular thing. But I'm glad that we're gonna get the doggy vasectomy instead of remove the testicles completely. It seems like it makes way more sense to me. It's way less invasive, and in my opinion, the benefits outweigh the cost. But this is the point of critical thinking and informed consent, where you can have a conversation with a few different people and decide for yourself what the best decision is. I think it's so important with human medicine as well, obviously, that there is that you have options and that there's informed consent.
Yeah, yeah.
So real world example of not just doing what is cheap and normal. It's very it's we have to drive like an hour and a half just to find somebody who does these procedures, because normally they just scoop out the genitals, basically.
Oh man, that sounds terrible. I'm glad you're doing the more effective route. So, I mean, that reminds me of the puberty blockers. Did you know that some of these puberty blockers they're using for boys is the same drug they use to castrate inmates?
Prisoners.
Like chemical castration.
I did know that.
It's not a. And then there's people coming out there that are quote unquote in charge of shit. People who are authorities on the subject, saying, "Oh no, it doesn't really fuck them up. It basically, they can start puberty again at some point later, and it'll be totally fine. Like they can stop, like that." And the thing is, people believe it. They believe that you could stop a natural physiological process, and that you're going to just be able to resume without any negative effects.
Well, that's fucking insane. And if you believe that, I got some beachfront property in Arizona to sell you. Uh, and number two, like just give it some time, you fucking idiots. Like it's a child. Children are retarded. And we believe this to be true because we don't allow children to make important decisions for themselves. They can't fuck an adult. They can't smoke a cigarette. They can't go to war, right? They can't vote. They can't vote, but they can vote to irreversibly change their entire being because they feel, look, being a kid is about feeling weird and awkward and not knowing your place in the world. That is literally what growing up is about. Isn't it even called like the awkward phase? It's like that's a normal phrase that we talk about. You go through this
Yeah.
awkward phase where you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane to do that irreversible harm to a kid. And I would love to. I haven't actually met anybody in person who believes the opposite, but I would love to have a conversation with someone who thought the reverse of that.
Yeah, I
Like,
haven't
just
found
give it a
anybody in
minute.
person either.
Well, it's the
Yeah.
same as like marijuana. So I don't think kids should smoke marijuana, but I think once you're all developed, like go for it and do it as an experiment to see what your behavior is alongside with it. If it glues you to the couch and takes away all of your fire of ambition, maybe it's not so hot. But if you use it as an exercise aid or a musical aid or just an enhancement of whatever, then that's all well and good. But it's about um, the appropriate dose for where you're at in life. You don't want to do that stuff when you're developing. That's not very good. I would argue that any form of chemical castration is maybe even more invasive.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, mind control, I call it the triangle of death. You got the FDA, the health insurance, health insurance, and uh, government regulations. And then I was thinking about another mind control that people get stuck in, is the education mind control. So I was talking to
Oh yeah.
somebody. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and about investing. It's a friend of mine, and they've always had the 9 to 5 job, and now they're looking to branch out and become, they're like looking for work. And I was like, well, why don't you do this program? It's basically going to teach you how to do real estate investing, and you're going to be able to make money. You'll make more money in the first year than you were making at your last job if you just do the program, follow the steps. And not only that, they have the personality that would crush it at this particular game of money making. And so, but they say, I've never actually invested more than a couple $100 in myself, besides college. It got me thinking. I go, yeah, I have so many friends that racked up over $200,000 in college debt and student loan debt. And And she was afraid to invest $12,000 in this program. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going, this is like, if you could zoom out and see how investing 12,000 will help you make 12 million, 12,000 doesn't seem like shit. And yet I don't know if she did this, but a lot of people spend $200,000 and are making payments for the rest of their life, $1,000 a month payments for the rest of their life, for an education that didn't actually prepare them to make the money they needed to pay off that loan. And so it's another, what I look at is, and when I say mind control, is it intentional or is it just what's become? Either way, people are controlled by it, whether there's a puppeteer or not. And I think a lot of times people get caught up on whether there's a puppeteer or not. And then if they can't find the puppeteer and they don't think it's true, it's like, look, there's evidence of it. We don't know exactly how it's happening, but it is happening. And so people kind of like people that go to a doctor, or they won't go to a doctor unless it's inside their network. People will drop a shitload of money on a loan from a bank that is backed by the federal government. It's guaranteed money to the banks. And when people leave school, they don't want to invest any more money. They're paying off that student loan debt from that education that may or may not have been useless. And so they get caught in
Usually
this trap.
useless.
Usually useless.
And why would they have to guarantee that loan in the first place? Like, right? Shouldn't you be like, hey, bank, I'm going to go to school for, you know, uh, underwater basket weaving major or something like that. I'm going to get a degree in basket weaving. Can you loan me the money? And they would be like, go fuck yourself, because they would have no reason to believe that you will be able to pay them back based on the business that you started. Because basically you can think of a student loan like R&D for a business, right? So you're going to
yeah.
do 4 years of research and development, and then at the end of it, you're going to have this business that you've done research for. And the bank, if it believed that you were going to be able to pay them back, would bet on that appropriately. But the fact that the government has to come in and impose that upon the borrower is proof that they do not believe you will be able to pay it back, because you would just default on it right away, because it's not a good business plan for 90% of the people. College is a great investment, but only if you own a college.
Yeah. Yeah. And in turn, I mean, one of the things that has happened is when you have federally backed loans, whatever it is that you're purchasing goes up in cost. So universities are
Tremendous.
like,
Yeah.
well, they'll just take
Tremendous.
out a loan so we can raise tuition 10 grand a semester. Easy. And it's been creeping up ever since that's happened. But there's there's this trap of education that the only education that is of value and importance and worth investing in is the education that has been regulated as being backed for student loans. So if you invest in anything that's not that, then now you're out in some alternative educational realm, which is completely foreign to so many people. And
Mm.
so the thing that also blows my mind is when I was in the Navy, I met so many guys that were there for college money. And I go,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot safer ways and easier ways to get college
Yeah.
money. And so there's this idea that college is this thing and it's expensive, and I could go into debt, or I could go in the military, and then I could go to college. And it's such a very fascinating thing. And then so I was adding it up the other day. I know I've spent at least $250,000 on education post college. So that is, I paid specific people to teach me shit. Uh, there were no schools involved. Uh, it was, and I'd love to hear what your number is, what you've invested in education, like, masterminds, coaches, courses, all these things. I spent over $250,000, and I did have the GI Bill, but so I didn't really rack up much student loan debt, but uh, the $250,000 I invested blows all the college out of the water for me. So my education probably without the GI Bill probably cost, say, $150,000. My $250,000 education after that was just, I made so much money because of that. It was totally worth it.
Same for me, basically. I went to college. After the first year of school, I switched back to go to community college because I figured out you could get the same classes for much cheaper. And then I
Sometimes the
ended up
same
dropping out of.
teachers.
Yeah, it was the same. It was worth the same credits. It was the same courses. They're like, you need to do all this song and dance bullshit. Um, it's a waste of time. But I went back and did community college instead. Went back to San Diego State, which is a pretty shitty school, and they send me letters to donate money to them, even though I dropped out, which is pretty hysterical. It's very bold and brazen. It's like, how could you?
Yeah, like the university I attended sends me that. I'm like, dude, I know what tuition costs. You guys don't need fucking money.
Yeah, dude, are you kidding? I'll just go punch an 18-year-old in the face as much as I would like to donate money to you. It's like the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah.
Um. Anyway, no greater child abusers than school. But anyway, back to the point. I dropped out of college. I didn't spend much money on college. I worked the whole way through. Went to a state school, which was not too expensive. I only went twice a week, so I didn't live on campus. I worked the whole time. I didn't finish, of course, but I went to community college for like 2 of the years, about maybe a year and a half. As far as education beyond that, yeah, well over 100K. I'm not sure exactly what the number is by the time so it's probably like 180-ish, I would say, like once you include all of the courses I've attended plus the traveling. But I've certainly made more than that. Maybe not directly because of it. I mean, some of the stuff I went to was an absolute waste, but still worth it to try.
Well, what
So
about
yeah,
all the
way
money?
more
How
outside.
much? And then there's the other thing is, so I've learned by two methods. One is learning from other people, and then one is learning from my mistakes. And learning from my mistakes was the most costly. Uh,
That's I would argue that's the only way real learning happens is through direct experience. Like you can have someone tell you do this and this and that. Here's the formula. For example, there's a lot of mind control around the fact that college is good for you. Here are the steps. You do good in high school, you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, you set up a 401k, you work your ass off, you retire, and then you sit in a chair by the golf course or something like that. Like I don't know, but that's the story that is painted for people, and it's very normal to take on debt for something like that. So that aspect of mind control is crazy toxic, right?
oh yeah.
So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
What do you want to talk about
It's
next?
let's see. I mean, we've really covered so many forms of child abuse. We have like gender reassignment for preteens and teenagers, which is it's how can they give informed consent for that, but not for something else, right? That's
Not a
insane.
tattoo.
How do you? Yeah, exactly. This tattoo could scar you permanently. Now let's cut those balls off. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's topsy-turvy world. Once again, I think it's just the loudest minority that is getting the most attention because more than anything, it's a freak show,
Well,
and
I think
we
the
give the
reason they
most
get
attention to the
so
freak
far
show.
is because most people are afraid of being called things like transphobe. Like people want to belong to the tribe so badly. They don't want like we have this thing the way we perceive. If I could get 10 people that praise me, and if one person's upset, I focus in on that one upset person. And so, I could make a post online like, hey, maybe we should consider not castrating children. And then, most people were nodding their heads in silence, going, yeah, someone's going to come after him. And then sure enough, somebody comes in and, like you said, the minority come in, and everybody who agrees with you just kind of stands back and goes, I
Yeah,
don't want to mess with that situation. And
right.
so, yeah, well, there's some phrase about that, uh, most of the evil exists in the world because men do nothing. They do nothing, say nothing.
Right. The only way that evil can triumph over good is for good men to stand by and do nothing.
Right.
And you mentioned something about like being called a transphobe,
Yeah.
right? I would say why is it okay to single me out because I'm afraid of trans people? Am I allowed to be afraid of stuff? People wouldn't be like, "Oh, what are you, fucking arachnophobe? What are you afraid of spiders?" And I'd be like, "Yes, I am. I'm afraid of spiders." And they would like probably not
Most spiders
verbally.
would never harm
I
you. It's like, yeah.
right, and probably most trans people would never harm you either. But there are some that would, just like
Yeah.
spiders. I'm not
Yeah.
saying trans people are like spiders, obviously. That's not the conclusion I'm trying to draw. But I think it's funny how people get singled out. Oh, you're a homophobe. Isn't it okay? Like you don't choose to be gay, but you also don't choose what you're afraid of. Isn't that kind of the same discrimination that's happening again? Shouldn't homophobes be free to like be born afraid of gay people just like gay people should be free to be born gay? I mean, isn't it that simple, really?
Look, you're making too much sense. You're going to get us banned off of YouTube.
I mean, it's okay to discriminate. What's the big deal?
Yeah. Let's unpack that one because I think that uh, a while back. So there's a few things out there that people just accept as true. So one is discrimination is wrong. There was one that we did a while back where you talked about how tolerance is the problem. People pride themselves on being tolerant. You're like, no, that's the fucking problem. You're not. You're neither accepting or rejecting. You're just in the middle, not doing shit about anything. Uh, so the discrimination piece is really really interesting because it's been misused in so many ways and used in a manner to defame people, defamation.
Right.
And yeah, and sometimes I just change the word out with discern. It's like I'm
Mm-hmm.
discerning, but
Right.
yeah, we like people who are effective. They discriminate. Now, people hear that and they automatically go, "Oh, discriminate on gender or color or age or whatever it is." And you're like, "Well, what if someone applies for a job and I'm discriminating based on their level of education?" Well, that kind of discrimination is okay. It's like, okay, all right. So discrimination by itself isn't necessarily bad, or like this person doesn't have enough job experience to have this job. I'm going to have to hire somebody that's got more whatever. Okay, that's not discrimination. No, that's discrimination, but it's not seen as a bad type of discrimination. And the the whole point of a lot of these anti-discrimination laws was to keep the government from discriminating based on things like gender, race, age, and all that, because government was the biggest offender of discriminatory practices for things that people have no control over. You don't have control over your gender when you come out. You don't have control over the color of your skin. These are things that in an ideal world, there should not be discrimination based on those things, because we do know that, we should be judging things by their content and not the color of their skin, right? So I think you and I would both agree it's probably really good not to discriminate based on things like, well, I would say color is probably the only one I can think of. I'm definitely going to discriminate against women being on the front lines for combat. Like, the average dude comes in and says, "Oh, I want to do this, participate in this way." You go, "Okay, we could probably get you in shape and get you squared away and all that." But the average woman comes in, you're like, the mental, I go, okay, the average woman's not gonna be able to do this. I'm not saying all women can't do it, because I've seen some women in the military that were kicking ass. They were badass. But the average versus the
Daddy
average,
issues.
I'm gonna discriminate. Yeah, probably.
I'm just joking. Just totally demean an entire group like that. No, but you're 100% right. And here's the deal. Remember, the reason we have any type of governance is just to make sure that the marketplace is safe, so people can make their own choices. And here's the deal. If you discriminate based on anything other than merit, the market is going to kick you in the balls. Like, if you go, I'm only going to hire Asian women. Well, actually, you would probably be the most organized business ever. That's a bad example. But if you were only going to hire like a certain group, and you forced everybody to be part of that certain group, by definition, you would have to get people who are less qualified than the person who's going to accept people just based on the talent that they have to do the job appropriately. So in a certain sense, the marketplace does the best job of encouraging a meritocracy and efficiency, right?
Yeah, one of the problems with all of this that ends up being brought up is people will point at the lack of diversity in an organization as proof that they're discriminating based on race or gender. They'll go, "Oh, that's all the evidence I need to know that you are racist." It's like, well, hang on here. Maybe we are doing exactly what you said. We're just, it's all on merit. And yet people, and Jordan Peterson has talked about this. He goes, most women, when they leave school, would prefer not to choose. Like, it's not even about, there's no discrimination here. The women tend to discriminate. We'll say this, they're discriminating against engineering. So why is if you go to Silicon Valley, why are there so many males in this engineering department, hardly any women? They're not represented. All these male engineers must, hate women. But the reality is like, the average woman isn't gonna, like, the top engineers are mostly going to be men. And the reason is, Jordan Peterson mentioned this in a way that made a ton of sense, is men tend to be more narrowly focused and only good at a handful of things. Whereas women in school, they're able to look at this statistically about how men and women perform in school, women are more likely to do well over a broad amount of subjects. They're going to be good at a lot of things. So women generally have more options. Whereas men in school a lot of times they'll do really well in one or two subjects. So early on, and mathematics tends to be something where men gravitate towards. So early on in someone's educational career, they're already getting to the path of engineering. It's like, look, I'm good at math. I'm not good at all this other stuff. Engineering jobs are paying. That's what I'm going to do. But a woman gets out and she goes, well, I don't want to do engineering. There's a lot of people doing it. And I'm actually really good at all this other stuff too. So I'll do something else. So just one of the things I've seen is like people come out and say, look, the lack of this potential person type of person in your organization is indicative of, you being racist or something. And so it's a very interesting thing that comes up for people.
Oh my God. Did you just tell me that men and women are different? You sexist, misogynistic bastard. It is funny to me how many hoops people will jump through to deny the primal natural differences between men and women, instead of just embracing that for most people it's a certain way. Most men would be killers in battle, way better than ladies. And most men are horrible nurses. Gay guys tend to make pretty good nurses though also, right? It's just funny how that works, and there's usually a little bit more of a feminine side to nurturing. So A, how dare you suggest that men and women are different? And B, there are a lot of factors that make a person decide what they want to do in their life, and the marketplace rewards things differently. But if you get hung up on these things, all it does is like steal your soul, basically. You're so worried about what everybody else is doing instead of just doing what interests you. Because there are some women engineers who are like, man, this is amazing. They're like super alphaed out and they like doing their thing. They're like power business lady, start their own business, entreprenettes, that whole thing. And then some ladies really gravitate toward having a few kids and being a mother and being a wife and being part of a family unit where everyone's doing what they're best at. And also, let's not forget that for a society to work, women are way more important than men. Way more important. Like, you can have one dude and 50 ladies and you can start a whole society. But if you have 50 dudes and one woman, you're screwed.
Yeah.
As soon as the woman goes into heat, the guys will all kill each other trying to fight over her. And then you'll just slowly reduce the male population, and you can only have one baby
people
at a time. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how many hoops we'll jump through to try to pretend that generalizing is wrong. But you can't survive without generalizing. You have to generalize. Otherwise, every experience would be a unique one that you would have to investigate thoroughly before taking an action. You'd be completely frozen with every step you take because you'd be trying to figure out what's going on around you.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to not sweat it. Like, whatever your gender is, whatever your sexual orientation is, don't get bought into the idea that that shit is even important at all. It's just a very vocal minority trying to make you think that it's important. If there's any advantage, really, it's being wealthy. If you have lots of money, a lot of problems are solved instantly, but then you move on to the next series of problems, which money doesn't solve at all. So really, it's like, take your pick. But don't get caught up in the idea that any of this is important. Just do what you like to do. And that's why school is such a bummer anyway, because all it does is take you away from the simple fact that you have to create value for yourself or for other people. And if you don't, then you don't eat, basically. Like, you could just create value for yourself. You could start a farm out in the middle of the woods. It would be really difficult. Or you can participate in the marketplace which requires that the value is delivered. And that's the only thing you really need to understand is value delivered. And of course, school does not teach you that at all. So the longer you're in school, the longer you're just delaying the reality of value delivered.
Yeah, I have people that, they ask me, are you concerned with the apocalypse? Are you concerned with, things get really bad? Um, and I've talked about this before, but there's a different direction I'm taking it. Uh, I not really, and the reason I'm not so much is because they're like, well, what if the dollar takes a shit? What if Bitcoin goes away? What if all these what ifs about, what if all the money that you have is worthless and so on and so forth? I go, you know what? You know what I got for me is I'm useful. I will, under any circumstance, find a way to create value for other people, things that they value. So there's a community of farmers. Everything hits the fan. I bug out to the farm. I'm immediately going to make myself incredibly useful. I'm gonna be a really nice guy. I'm gonna help prepare some
I
meat.
think
I'm
we all
gonna
know what that means. He's going to be a really nice guy. I'll see you under the bridge.
and it that's the being able to provide value for other people is the one thing to guarantee yourself to always have an income, whether
World's oldest profession.
you're trading almonds or dollars or gold or bullets or cacao, whatever it is that's being used as a currency at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to accumulate it as long as you're creating value. If you're not creating value, no one's going to give it to you.
And the females won't judge you as viable mate either. That's the
Yeah, you're not
main
going to have
job.
any offspring. Yeah.
They'll be like, nope, that other guy, way better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny. So you're not worried about the apocalypse because you believe that regardless of what happens, you'll be all right. So your confidence is in your own skills, essentially.
Yeah. Like it doesn't matter what happens in the outside world. We'll figure it
Right.
out. We'll figure
Yeah.
it out. And I think community is so important. We live in this grand community where all this, commerce is happening and we get to specialize.
Mm.
But if things were to shrink and I find myself in a community of 100 people, but the same rules still apply. My job probably changes, but
Yeah.
that's about it.
And there really are only two ways to not sweat the estimated apocalypse. You accept the fact that everything can change any moment, it could all go away. And you have confidence in your skills that when it does change, you'll be there to shock absorb, right? And
Yep.
thrive no matter what.
Yep.
Who cares what direction the tide is going? Just keep swimming the best you can.
Yeah. Anytime the tide changes, I like to ask myself, what's the opportunity here? So
Mm,
many people became wealthy during recessions and in the depression. And my whole thing
always.
is, look, we're in the middle of a recession right now, and what I remind people of is, look, you might make less money during this time than you did 2-3 years ago, or what less money this year than what you'll make in 5 years from now. But just going through this process where it's difficult and you get to learn, you're learning at hyper speed. You're learning so much so fast when things are tight. When there's a recession and there's not as many people buying and this and that, and the businesses and the business owners that make it through, like if you have a business and it just keeps on going through a recession, even if things get a little bit thinner, when you pop out the other side, holy shit! As the skill of being a business owner, you've honed it pretty well. You've probably operated really lean, and then when plenty comes back, you're not going to be as bloated. And if you did a good job with your marketing, if you're marketing all the way through a recession or a depression, and then on the other side of that, you still exist. Well, when people do have the money, they're going to come buy your products, buy your services. So I really see times like these as an overall blessing, because if it was just good all the time, you know, people just do. There's a lot of waste created during good times. Uh, I, I've seen that I study basically the coaching industry, and I study real estate, and people were doing real estate deals 2-3 years ago that would bury them. The way that they created these deals would bury them now. Like they were getting away with, they were working with really fat margins, and if they used the same math to try to do it now, they it'd be a mistake. So like learning about business during this time, I think it's an incredible opportunity.
No doubt. I think tying it all back together, it really does come down to value and values. And you got to decide for yourself what your values are. Freedom is a good value. Love is a good value. And then understanding how you can deliver value to others. And there are so many ways to do it. You don't want to get caught up in no man's land. So just try stuff out. In the beginning, we were talking about exercise and, oh, my back is tight. What should I do? Should I stretch it? It's like, well, probably not, but I don't know. And well, why don't you know? Well, I don't know you. We have stuff to figure out still.
Mm-hmm.
And with business and with marketing, especially, you and I have probably met some of the best marketers in the world.
Hands down.
And
I
if
got a couple on speed dial.
and
I should probably use them more.
humble brag, he's flexing right now, folks. Uh, drop some names. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
No,
I
but
won't do that.
what's interesting is I was at this company in LA, huge company, billion in sales a year. And we were talking about marketing and video sales letters and ad campaigns and stuff like that. And what struck me was, how many people are involved. Ultimately, it's like one guy writing the script, but there are a lot of people who assist that guy writing the script. There's an actor who plays the role and says the words. There's a media team who does the video and the images and designs the pages and all that stuff. But what really hit me was the fact that they didn't know what was going to work or not. And we're talking $1 billion in sales. We're talking about as good as you can get at mind controlling people into purchasing, which is what marketing is. The best. And they don't know if it's going to work or not. It might not work. And I remember they had an example where they did this big video sales letter, 55 minutes, tons of people working on the project. And then they replaced it with, because it didn't work. It wasn't working very well. It wasn't generating a positive return on ad spend. And then they switched it up. This particular offer, because they had a lot of offers, with a bunch of testimonials. There's a page full of testimonials and a little purchase thing. And it outperformed it like 4-1 or something like that. It was really obscene. And the thing is, you just don't know until you try. So bringing it back to value and values is you have to accept that you won't know until you try it out. You might think, oh, well, who's going to want my stuff? That's like, well, you don't know. You got to just offer it up there, and you won't know. Even if you were the cleverest guy or gal or whatever in between, you wouldn't know ahead of time what was going to work the best. So you have to just try it out and figure it out. Same thing with the stiffness in your back. 2 people with a stiff back, One of them just needs to go for a walk. One of them needs to go for a walk with a sandbag, and one of them needs to hang from a bar. And these are just super generalizations, but I've seen it all work. So you won't know until you try. And that's how you figure out what people value, is you test it out. And how you figure out what works with you physically and mentally is you do an experiment. An experiment is not a quick fix, unfortunately. If you want to really figure out nutrition for yourself, you're not going to figure that out by reading a meal plan that someone gave to 1 million people that says how many almonds you're supposed to eat every day at 9 a.m. It's not going to work. You have to be your own experiment. And most people are not willing to do that with their physical exercise, with their business experience. And if you are, you're automatically going to be in the 1%. And that's a good place to be, regardless of what economic situation or social justice or whatever the hell it is situation that you may find yourself in.
Yeah. I'm out of words. I ran out.
Good time to end it. Good time to end it. No, I mean, if you have something else, lay it down.
I'm good.
But I think it wrapped up what we were talking about nicely.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, you can check me out at maxshank.com. you can check me out at maxshank.com, at maxshank. Go to my YouTube channel, subscribe. Cool stuff coming. By the time this is out, it might already even be there.
Ooh.
So,
ooh.
And then make sure to sign up for Mike's email newsletter, where he drops all types of knowledge missiles. They're not knowledge bombs. They're actually much more precision guided knowledge missiles that he will fire upon you.
Precision guidance. Yeah, and I have a program that I'm launching. I did a 2-hour webinar, which I put like an hour and 40 minutes of it up on the website. So if you go to schoolfortheliving.com, then you can see the webinar I gave. And I think you'll really, really enjoy it. If you enjoyed the conversation today, I think you'll enjoy that webinar. Thanks, y'all. Love you, Max.
Love you, buddy.